Alright, so what Josh and I are going to talk about now is how you can use tokens to maximize your efficiency within your instance. But before we dig into this, I want to do a little bit of a room survey. How many of you know what tokens are in Marketo? A pretty decent number. Good. How many of you are using tokens currently? Awesome. Okay, pretty decent number. That's good. So we're going to give a little bit of an overview of what tokens are. We're going to skip briefly over what basic tokens are. Most of what we're going to focus on is intermediate and advanced tokens, primarily because the basic tokens are pretty basic and we don't want to spend too long talking about them. But tokens are basically variables that you can insert into assets, campaigns, programs in Marketo that allow you to substitute values. From a beginner level, that's as simple as when I receive an email that says, "Hi Grace," that bit that says my name is a lead token, and it's the squiggly, I should really learn the formal name for those brackets, the squiggly, lead dot first name m squiggly. That is your first name token. That is a pretty basic level token. Most of you should be familiar with that, even if you before this didn't know what tokens are. But tokens are one of the most wide-ranging, one of the most potentially complex aspects of Marketo, and they're also one of the most powerful. They really enable you to do some pretty cool stuff. So obviously they range from the beginner to the more advanced levels. And you should be familiar with first name tokens. You may also be familiar with some system tokens. So if you want to stamp the time of an event onto a field, you can do that using a system token in a flow step. You may also be familiar with what we're particularly going to focus on in the advanced section, which are my tokens, and that's where most of the fun happens, which is why I called the sample my awesome token. But as far as beginner goes, it's your lead tokens, company tokens, system tokens. Intermediate, some of the ones we're going to cover are program tokens, campaign, SQL, member tokens, trigger tokens. And then in your advanced section, these are all different types of my tokens. You can have script ones, folder level my tokens, calendar files, and scoring tokens as well. So there's a lot of power in the system that you can unlock by covering those ones off effectively. But to kick us off, we're going to start with intermediate tokens, and I'm going to let Josh give a summary of this one.
Cool. I guess before we get too much into this, one of the things we all going to make sure that we do is make sure that this slide deck is also up on the Marketo community in the in the Auckland User Group. So if you happen to miss something, or if you want a little bit more information, either come and chat to us after this, or hit up the post that we'll drop into the user group in the community as well. Cool. So intermediate tokens. I'm not going to spend too much time on these ones because we want to kind of focus a little bit more on the advanced stuff, on the fun stuff. But we're going to start off by looking at the trigger tokens. So what are they? These are dynamically changing sort of variables that essentially allow you to sort of populate information into things like interesting moments. They can kind of populate a lot of different information. I use them quite a lot to populate sort of campaign name information into interesting moments so that my sales team can know exactly what white paper or what form or what event it was that the user was actually attending. So it just pulls through the campaign name via the actual intermediate token there. Program tokens. These ones are pretty much like what I just mentioned before, actually, with the program tokens. So these are variables that kind of change and pull through, I guess, details on the program or the smart campaign kind of lives within. So these pull through things like the name, the ID, the description of the program. And once again, you might use these within sales alerts. So if you've got your Marketo instance to Microsoft Dynamics or through to Salesforce, you might want to start using sort of program tokens to help your sales team kind of figure out, again, what kind of program it is that a person is engaged in content with. Campaign tokens. These ones are, again, dynamic variables that essentially just allow you to identify details about the smart campaign that actually triggered the action. So much like the programs before, this one, if you've got specific smart campaigns built within your program, you might want to alert your sales team or have a particular field within your against the lead record that sort of pulls this information through so that you can, well, keep that information around basically. Yeah, just to make it a bit easier to kind of communicate the source. Member tokens. These ones are, sort of, again, dynamic variables that populate unique values from integrated service partners. A good example of this would be for things like webinar registrations. SP send alert info tokens. So these ones are designed to pull info pull info about where the sync person resides within your CRM. So you can see in the email message down there, we've got the SFDC details token that's kind of highlighted in the blue box down the bottom there. These can populate things such as your first and last name details as a link to the person within Marketo, a link to the person in the CRM, either Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics. And these are really good for actual sort of internal alerts to your sales team. I know myself and a lot of my clients are using these really well for that kind of thing.
Cool. And one thing I will highlight as well in terms of the why you want to use these, one of the real key benefits of this is that using tokens effectively gives you real scalability throughout your instance. So where you could otherwise have an interesting moment campaign in every single program that you're running and have the details of the program, the details of the smart campaign, the form they filled out, whatever those details are, where you could have those as typed individually into a single smart campaign in every program. Using tokens to populate that dynamically allows you to potentially have a separate program that runs all of your interesting moments and have that populate dynamically so that where you would otherwise have 20 different campaigns to run that for 20 different forms, you now have one. And then if you need to change it, you have to change it in one place instead of in 20 places. So that's one of the real benefits of these. Plus it also assists you with cloning. So for a lot of the sales alert ones, instead of having to go in and hand type everything for every different one, if you use that sort of process a lot, when you create a new program, when you have a new use case for that, you just right-click clone, and all of those details populate dynamically. You don't have to go into the system and change those things again. So again, it's really about enabling you to spend your time in the system far more effectively. So moving on to advanced tokens, and this would not be a presentation by me if it didn't have lots of GIFs. So, and don't critique me on my pronunciation because I don't want to get into a fight. Thanks, Paul. So there's two reasons why this is full of GIFs. Number one is because we're about to get a little bit technical and this may get a little bit dry. But also number two, this is actually where people like Josh and I start getting genuinely really excited because this is where the cool stuff happens.
Yeah.
So, advanced My Tokens. So we highlighted a little bit at the beginning what My Tokens are, but they're basically where everything we've talked about so far, we've used the word dynamic. They're dynamically populating. Generally, My Tokens are not dynamic, with one particular exception, which we will talk about. But My Tokens are a way that allow you to custom specify a variable that you want to change across different programs, across different folders, or keep consistent across different folders, different campaigns. You can create them in the My Token tab of either a program or a folder, and if you create them in the My Token tab of a folder, they will cascade and be inherited down to every program and every folder that lives within that folder. So it becomes a really great way for you to scale details that remain consistent throughout your instance. My tokens come in all sorts of different types. You can get plain text ones, rich text ones, calendar files, images, lead scores, velocity script. There's a bunch of different things that you can do here. We're not going to cover all of them because it's humanly impossible. We'd be here until the burning death of the sun, basically. So we're not going to do that, but we will cover a couple. And one of the cool things about My Tokens is that they do work in multiple different areas of the system. You can use them in flow steps, you can use them in emails and landing pages, and you can also use them in webhooks, which if you're using webhooks is very handy functionality. One of the big benefits of My Tokens as well is the scalability of it, because if you change one, you change everywhere that value is populated, everywhere that token is referenced. The value that you specify automatically populates to all of those places. And there's a couple of really good examples of where that's useful. So if you have a think about any variable in your instance that is used regularly and should be kept consistent, then this could potentially be an opportunity for you to use tokens where you otherwise aren't currently. Really good examples of that include copyright year, which for me is on the bottom of every single email and every single landing page. Should be for yours if it's not. Your company name, presumably that's not going to change anytime soon. The source URL for your logo is a really, really beneficial one that I highly recommend, because if you go under a rebrand, all you have to do is change that URL and you don't have to go and change it everywhere else. But in addition to that, brand colors, your website URL, legal disclaimers is a really great use case for it. Anything that you can think of like that, there's probably an opportunity to be using My Tokens to fill those details if you aren't already. And one thing to think about as well is the strategic way in which you organize your My Tokens because of the way that they cascade. Again, we will be putting these slides up, so I know this is a lot of detail to take in, and some of these screenshots are probably a little bit small, so don't freak out about taking too many notes. They will be available. We'll also chat to our lovely friends at Marketo and see if we can get them emailed out for anyone who misses them. But say you've got a use case where you've got one business that operates across multiple regions, and you've got all of those working in one workspace in Marketo with regions broken down by folder. Say that business has very specific requirements around legal disclaimers, and the specific wording of those legal disclaimers, and that those legal disclaimers must always be present. I am speaking of a use case that I have been through, working in finance. So what you can do in this kind of scenario is have the variables that stay the same across both regions at the top folder level. So that might be your company name, your copyright year, your logo URL, your brand colors, those sorts of things. And then as you start to break down into the folder levels where variables start to change, input those things there. So you could have at the Australia folder level or the APAC folder level, the region, the legal disclaimers, the URLs, various different things that change at those levels. Start cascading those at those folders, and you'll see in these examples that we've got here, we've got 3 levels going down. We've got the parent folder level where you can see local tokens but no inherited tokens, and then local tokens and inherited tokens. And then at the final level, we're looking at a program where that program has local tokens specific to that program and has inherited all of the tokens from its parent folders up. It's a really, really good way to allow you to scale variables that are consistent, but where there may be some variation around different sectors of the business, and also things that you need to ensure stay the same for brand consistency, for compliance reasons, whatever that may be. One thing to highlight is that you can override inherited tokens if you want to. It's very easy. You basically just double click on them in the My Tokens thing and in the tab and put in whatever you want. But you should do this with caution, because once you've done it, you cannot undo it. You cannot put that token back to being inherited and not overridden. And what that means is that any changes you make to the value of that token at the parent level will not cascade down. So if you accidentally override the copyright year 2016, when in the parent level you go and set it to 2020, it'll still be 2016 at that level. So just do that with caution. Do you want to talk to this one? Because
Sure.
I feel like I've talked enough at
That's
this
all right.
point.
Cool. So those same program tokens or even folder tokens get to be, you can use them within any of your local assets. So any of your emails, any of your landing pages, anywhere you kind of want to use them. Essentially just to kind of, as we've kind of written down here, just to push those variables through into those assets. So you can kind of see, it might be a little bit hard to see over here, but what we've got are landing page tokens over here and the email tokens that are over here. These are 2 assets that are local to one program. The program tokens that we've set up under the My Tokens tab We've just specified the details such as like the event name, the event date, and all of those details will pull through into every single one of the assets. So we don't have to go up through and edit an email and edit a landing page separately to add those details. They're pulling those details straight through from the from the program token section itself. Where this is really quite useful are for repetitive campaigns. So for things like events that you're running, for webinars, these are things that I've used them for quite consistently, just so that I'm not having to change things frequently. I can just set them up at a template level on a program that I'm having to clone or replicate multiple times, then they've already been set up, all ready for me to go. One of the really cool things you can get a little bit tricky with these, or a bit play with, is you can kind of control text and images with tokens as well. So for things like, again, with an event, this is a great opportunity to look at having a token for the header banner. It's a great opportunity to have a section for like the body copy for an event, so that the same copy and the same image pulls through into both the email and through to the landing page. This is, as I say, like a nice tricky way to kind of play with tokens, so it's definitely something to have a bit of a play with and have fun with. Lead scoring. You can look at using tokens to get a little bit more visibility over and a little bit more control over how you look at managing lead scoring within Marketo. So the easiest way to look at doing this are to look at creating score my tokens for each of your lead score changes that kind of reference each of the relevant tokens within the flow step. Why you'd want to do this is to have more control over what and how things are being scored. So you can see, maybe see, on the My Tokens section over here, we've got a whole range of different scores. What I mean by control is that if I am realizing that the top one there, which is clicks linked in any email, is actually underscoring, I can easily come through here, increase that to be +2 instead of +1, and it's going to change it automatically for any single flow step that that token already exists in. So I don't have to go through and update 3, 4, 5, 10 different smart campaigns myself. It's already managed here just by updating that one token step. Another cool use of these are the add to calendar links. So again, I use these for a lot of events and webinars that I'm running, just to create a link that appears within emails on landing pages that people can download a calendar invite to. Pretty much all of the details that you can actually see are on the actual screenshot there. At this stage, I think one of the key things that Grace has popped down in here is that this only really works for Outlook. Gmail is not necessarily supported by this. There are other ways to kind of get around that, but by the My Tokens section with the Marketo, it's pretty much Outlook only, which means it's probably a little bit more useful for B2B customers. What does it populate? Everything from your subject line, your location details, hyperlink details, finish, start dates. These are in US format, so just keep that in mind when you are creating these. I have been caught out by that once or twice before. And then the description details as well, which you can also use tokens in. Now this is kind of where tokens can get even trickier, because this is where we can start using script tokens. Now this is useful for, I guess, the next level, or the super advanced kind of dynamic personalization within any of your email assets or within your landing page assets. But it essentially allows you to create the dynamic content based on details either at the custom object or opportunity object level. So as I say, this is getting a little bit more advanced. It does support this, if this, then that style of logic, unlike what the traditional dynamic content within Marketo does. Where the difficulty kind of comes in here is that you kind of do require either a developer or have some development skills to kind of code some of this. It uses the Apache Velocity, which is based on JavaScript. I actually have used this to look at translating the default time code in Marketo, which is set in one of the American time zones, into a New Zealand time, so that a date time can actually be sent out to prospective customers.
And I'll add as well, this can be as simple or as complicated as you want/need it to be. So it can be as simple as, if the gender field is male, then put he; if it's female, then put she; if it's neither, put they. Or it can be as complicated as, if the most recent opportunity was created in this time period and it's of this type and it's above this value and it hasn't closed yet, then put this picture of a puppy; if not, put this picture of a kitten. You can almost, and that even isn't really that complicated for velocity. It's it is what you make it. If you come up with an idea for something you want to put in an email that's kind of dynamic and you can't figure out an out-of-the-box way to do it, there's probably a community discussion on it, which Samford Whiteman has gone on and been like, you're an idiot, do it this way. So search.
Okay, cool.
Then we are on to